This is a new one for me, so I haven't done this before, and I am quite new in a way to the autistic community as such, and you'll see why in a minute if you haven't heard of me. So I am quite really, I'm not cognizant of what you've been doing in the Alliance and Autistic Pride Days before, and so I'm just learning. But I was an autistic professional, and so it's quite a long story, and I try and, but I think it's really important because there are many people like me, and I was also going to touch on health issues and why it's so important. I'm not going to do a really like formal presentation. I don't think this is the right format for it, particularly on health issues and Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, but I will touch on it because that's what it's about, and that's what I advocate in, and but also in education. But I think what Joseph was just saying was really important. Not having a home and not finding your place, which has been my sort of métier for many years, because I'm quite old, and I didn't fit in anyway. So I was a lead. I was on leadership boards. I kind of still am in a different way, but I didn't fit in, and I did slightly have trouble because I am different. So yeah, so this was quite key for me, and so that's why I'm learning, and I like to do different events as well. So sorry about I can't do the slides at the moment because I can't share my screen, but I can talk about them because I've been doing talks for many years. Sorry?
Is it still not working?
Let me have a go. Oh, it is working. Here we go. Right. Okay. I just go into. So I'm just going to quickly move on. That's me. So basically, I moved a lot when I was younger, and I came back to school, and I was considered dim. I didn't get any, well, I got 2 qualifications, and I had a lot of illnesses and sickness and so on. And I just thought I was a really bad student, really. And obviously the usual thing of not fitting in the secondary girl groups and things like that. And to do with the physical issues and pain, I thought, and still do, it still happens, that everybody has my sort of pain, even now. And then I realized that people don't. It got worse at puberty, got worse at pregnancy. I have two children, and worse in menopause. So think about hormones. And anyway, I did have children, and then I became a single parent, and my children had a lot of medical issues, which masked some developmental issues with my eldest. But then sort of I went down that pathway and managed to get a diagnosis, quite a few, at that point of social communication. And then it moved on to, I think it was Asperger's, or autism stroke, because it couldn't work out when they had speech, and ADHD and dyspraxia. And I was always aware of the lack of tone, the hypertonia, and floppiness in the muscles there. And I wanted to help. So we kept being excluded from nursery school even, and it wasn't funny, obviously, at the time. It was quite horrible, and I was a single parent. And so I just thought that wasn't fair. I was being blamed as well. And we were just ostracized. So it was like a double ostracization. And so I decided to train, and I walked in and did asked to do a psychology degree because I wanted to help teach teachers and get people to accept people like my elders. And I knew I was different, but I didn't have a word for it myself, really. And then I studied psychology and I realized, yeah, definitely am. And but I knew I couldn't be because women like me are not allowed to be autistic. So it was a bit strange. So I knew I was, but I also knew I couldn't be. And that's been a sort of leading theme for me. I wanted to be an ed psych. I had to be a teacher, and they let me do that. And then I applied for the ed psych, but unfortunately I was so ill by then. I'd had so many operations I couldn't carry on, which was a real shame. So I carried on in special education, and then I did some more degrees, and I carried on as a local advisory teacher for the county council in autism. And then I was leading out the Autism Education Trust, which was the social model of education, and then lead for the NAS education, and assistant head teacher. And I kept losing my job, so which was really not great because I was a single parent. I needed the salary, but I'm not very good at the things you have to do when you're on boards and leadership things and working out. I was very good at my job, but just not that part of it. So, and because I didn't have a diagnosis and knew I wouldn't get one even from very leading people who said it wasn't possible, I didn't get that support. So that wasn't great. And also, I was not believed to be ill. I had all these physical issues, and I'll show you quickly what they are, some of them are, but it wasn't believed, even though there were actually dislocations at some point, because there was no preceding trauma. So I wasn't believed, and that sort of inflammation of injuries and being ill and allergies just grew and grew. So take note, don't let it grow. I did the wrong thing. I refused to go back to the doctor, and this is what you find with bad training. We do fight or flight, and I was flight, and that wasn't good, and I really went downhill and had to medically retire in 2015 when I got my Ehlers-Danlos diagnosis, and then 2016 I got my autism diagnosis. So I'm really quite late, and it took me 2 more years to really think that actually it is okay to have that diagnosis, because I still didn't believe it. And it's taken a long time. And so I'm a very, very elder person. Sometimes I say wise, but not always. Now, I started a social enterprise, and because there wasn't support for us. And so these are some of the key things that we have is skin with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So we don't always get a diagnosis, so don't worry about the name. But I do find a lot of people, neurodivergent people, have different sort of skin. It's either really, really thin and frail, and you can almost see through it. You can see the veins and moving, the blood and things moving, and bruise a lot really, really quickly. Or a thick velvety skin. It's like rubber. And when I fall and injure myself, I don't bruise for like 3 days. It's really, really thick. So I'll talk about that. Extreme fatigue, chronic fatigue syndrome, stroke, ME. When you have inflammation in the body, there are loads of different things it does, but you get tired. The body's fighting, so you get tired. Clumsiness, our proprioception is our senses are different. And so that could be things like dyspraxia and things like that. And we have a lot of gastrointestinal issues. We get headaches, migraine, a lot of anxiety and allergies, and definitely autism is there. So basically, this is very, very brief, but if you're building a house and you have to use cement and sand and water and the right proportions to build a stable house. And it's a bit like us with our bodies. If we use the wrong amounts in certain parts, you're going to get a really wonky house and a bit crumbly and a bit wobbly. And then you've got to think about the temperature issues that happen through the year, what's going to happen to those proportions. And then you've got to think about the electric and waterworks in a house, what's going to happen then. And that's a bit like, what happened to me, boom. So we have to be really careful. So that's a bit like the connective tissue in our bodies. It's throughout the body. It affects every single bit of the body. It's not just joints. That's what people think. It's not just joints. It's not being double jointed. It's everything from teeth, eyes, ears. We have it everywhere. And we lack the stiffness and strength in it. It's very lax. And so it is, the connective tissue is actually defective. So this is my quote, but it's actually really, really, I think it sums it up. When our body perceives an attack or even a real attack, our mast cells, which are throughout our body, is there for immune response, can overreact, and they release too much histamine alongside some other chemicals, and it can lead to what we call a cytokine storm. I'm going to talk about allergies a little bit. We get direct food allergies, so you can test that with the blood, the skin or blood. So that's quite, you can definitely get it. And we're allergic to tree nuts, for example. Unfortunately, my children, my history though was really brief. I've been through the mill, actually, social care, health, education, and unfortunately, particularly one of my children, and they're both allergic to tree nuts. And sadly, I was very, very lucky. My youngest survived, but very, very scary to events. So, and that's direct tree nuts. But the other one is indirect. You can't test it. So you're disbelieved when you have an anaphylactic reaction. It's real, that it's actually all in your head instead. So there are different types there. But those are some of the symptoms you can have. I won't read them all out. You can see what they are. Trigger, warning of inflamed skin coming up. Let me move that down. So this is what happens with mast cells when they react. The histamine comes up, and this was me, so I can show it. And it makes you feel really unwell, and for sometimes for no reason. It just seems to come out of the blue, and it did for me for a long time. In fact, I couldn't eat at all. I'd keep throwing up and vomiting, and sometimes people think it's because you don't want to eat or something like that, which I'm working on at the moment. So it's quite, I find a lot of the members do have these issues as well. And it can affect, the mast cells can affect us with the whole gastrointestinal issues. Anxiety is really important for us. So you're wondering why I'm talking about this. We know that autistic people get anxious. In fact, I don't recognize anxiety very well. I don't think I do get anxious at all. I don't present as anxious, but in fact, I do. I've worked out. Because for me, the anxiety is not being able to think, not being able to do anything. So if someone says, "Are you anxious?" I'll say no, but I think maybe I am. But there's another type of anxiety that's actually physical, it's not mental. And therefore, with people with symptomatic hypermobility or Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, we're often given counseling for mental anxiety, when actually it's a physical anxiety, and we're not believed it's physical. So that actually causes more mental anxiety there. So it's quite interesting when you look at that, and it's to do with dysautonomia. And I won't go into it too much, but it's about the fight and flight response. So it basically, when we're in a fight or flight response, the autonomic nervous system can do different things depending which one is affected. And it can mimic symptoms of anxiety, that like it's an actual anxiety disorder, but in fact it's physical. So it actually needs drugs to help it. And this is what causes a lot of confusion for us. This is my cat. He's caused me a lot of anxiety this week. Anyway, he's fine. So, but he was in hospital, and he only just made it as well. Why have I got him there? Because of his whiskers, the proprioception sense. So we have 8 senses, and the 8th one is interoception, which I've been talking about for at least 2.5 years. And it's quite interesting that no one was accepting it like 2.5 years ago, and suddenly people are now. I've been talking about the senses in my training since I was been talking about training and proprioception and vestibular sense, but it's really, really important, the interoception sense. And for us with hypermobility, we know the proprioception sense is quite disadvantaged there as well. So I'm going to quickly show you some of the symptoms. Here we are. You know, you might say, oh, I've got one of those, I've got 2 of those, whatever. Just think, I'm not saying you've got, I'm not allowed, I'm not medical, by the way, at all. But some of these things seem to be very, very common with us. The Raynaud's phenomenon, the cold hands, the core coldness as well. If you've got POTS, postural tachycardia, dysautonomia, you might have trouble with heat issues as well, make you feel really faint. Sensory issues, headaches, and migraine. Chronic fatigue seems to be very common. There are lots of reasons it could happen. It's still there's still research going on. Hormones are key. We know that for health issues with Ehlers-Danlos and symptomatic hypermobility, girls and women are much more symptomatic. So girls and boys are both can have it equally, but by puberty it seems to be more symptomatic, and then at pregnancy, and then in menopause. Also after trauma, viral infection, it seems to come on as well. Pain, I talk about pain a lot. I remember doing the pain conference back in years ago, and I've learned so much more now. I'd be quite embarrassed by it, really, seeing it back. But I did talk about some of these things then. And there's so many different types of pain. Myofascial pain is often ignored, and it's so important. It gets so rigid and tight. It feels like anything you touch it is just being punched. And I remember when I had it, and fibromyalgia pain, when I had it, I saw a physio specialist, and they said, we can help you, but it will be painful going through it. And they sort of, it was hands-on, and I was screaming, and I take a lot of pain. I have a lot of dislocations and things. And I was screaming, and he said, you'll have to come back in a week's time and have 2 more. And by the 3rd week, I said, oh, I'm really, really pleased. You're just being not so violent as the last time. I didn't think I'd come back. And they said it was absolutely the same pressure they were using the first time as the 3rd time. So it just shows that I had really been, the fibers in the myofascial pain, I'm not medical, were just overloaded. It was so sensitive, and this had lessened. Pain charts I talk about quite a lot. I can't do them. Never can. I think we need, in fact, I've just come out of the hospital. I've been up since 1:30 a.m. with my eldest. So I'm really glad I am here. But again, we're asked about pain, and I'm there, luckily, advocating, and I'm saying, where are we? Is it acute? Is it throbbing? Is it, where does it sit? You know, where do you find it? Does it change? And trying to do that in a urgent care is interesting. I do think that girls and women, there's a gender bias, and we're labeled medically unexplained symptom and go away. And that's why I'm involved in health, particularly because I'm fed up of it. I don't want other people to go through what I've been through and not believe. That's the key thing, not believe. My shoulders absolutely might as well be cut off almost now. And I've been like that before with my right hip. But the history is there of all the tears and dislocations that weren't believed. And other people have that too. So I think, you know, this has been around since 400 BC. It's time we were believed. And it affects our employment issues, so many people, because if you don't have a diagnosis, you don't know you're ill, and you're also autistic, and you are articulate in particular. I think there was a double whammy there, double jeopardy against me and against others. And we're just, you know, I was actually told it must be all in your head. Don't you like your job? And I'd really worked so hard to be there and get a salary and pay for my children. So this is why I advocate. I like to help other people, and I really, you know, if there's any questions you have about disability, chronic illness, have a look at these things. I've just led the content for the first school toolkit in the UK for EDS and what we call joint hypermobility syndromes, because so many children are going through what I went through, maybe more severe because they've got more severe symptoms. And I think I was delighted the main charities could do this. It was my passion. It's been my idea for a long time. And these are the most common areas. Now, this is seen at school in particular, but if you have children, you might want to look at this. And also it's for teachers and teaching assistants and so on. So they can look at it too. And it's a free resource. The link is there. So please have a look. And there's going to be a lot more work on this. So I think I have timed that quite to the second, as I usually do. If you want to know any more, please contact me. And I really hope you have a fabulous day, because I'm really glad to have done this and got through it. Thank you.